Hi everybody, welcome to another video. This is Alan and today we'll learn how to handle UI events in Blazor. Web UI elements can trigger different kinds of events in response to user interactions, and we'll see how to handle these events in order to create dynamic and responsive user interfaces in our Blazor applications. Some of the common UI events that we'll cover are click events, mouse events, keyboard events, form events, and focus events. Event handlers in Blazor are attached to HTML elements or Blazor components using special attributes, but we'll see now how it works. Okay, so let's go back to our project. We have here just like a simple Blazor web app project just created, just like in previous videos as well. And let me just open up the Solution Explorer. So in our counter page, we basically see in the previous videos as well that we have actually handled an event. In this component, we have handled here the onclick event with this event handler right here. So basically the onclick event is specified in the button element with this onclick attribute, and it has received a value of the method that we would want to basically be called as soon as this event is fired. So after we have the button is clicked, this method is being called, and we have specified the method in our code block below, just like we saw in the previous video. And if we click on the button, this increases the current count variable, and it is basically displayed here above. There's also another way to handle these events. We could use a lambda expression in the value of this onclick attribute, and we could just increase the current count field with this increment operator, and this would do the same thing that this method does. We usually do it with methods, but if it's something pretty simple or short, we could use a lambda expression. Let me just test it here. So this still works just the same way. Now we're just going to see some other type of events that we can handle in this video. Let me just take firstly an example of a form event. I am taking the oninput event, which basically is an event that is handled as soon as we input some data in an input tag. We'll see how this works. I'm just gonna take like an input element, single tag. I'm just giving it a type of text, basically just to specify that it receives text. And here we can just write this @ sign to get the event, to write the event attribute, which has a name of oninput, and we'll give a value to this attribute like handle input, which will be the name of the method which we'll use to handle this. And we could manually just write another method just like we did below here. But if we just hover over this name of the method, we can see a light bulb here, which gives us an option to generate for us an event handler or an asynchronous event handler. So a synchronous or an asynchronous event handler, depending on the use case. So basically just a method to help us define what we want to do with our event. I'm just clicking the first one to have a synchronous event handler, which is just a method, and we can see by default here that this method also takes a change event argument. These arguments basically just contain some additional information about the event that is erased, and we could basically just use these arguments as a parameter in our methods. They are not necessary if we do not want the information that these arguments give us. We do not have to use them, but we'll see why they are useful just right here. So how I want to handle this event is that basically I just want, as soon as we type something in the input, I want to show it just below. For this reason, I'm just gonna take a paragraph tag here, and I'm gonna have a string variable below, naming it text, giving it an initial value of like an empty string, and I'm displaying its value here. By using the @ sign, I'm taking the value of the variable right here, just below the input tag, and I'm just gonna put all this part in a single div so that they are like in two different lines. And I would want them to be like, to have a bit space from above. For this reason, I'm just gonna give them like a bootstrap class of margin 4. It just gives some margin on top, on bottom, in each side, basically, just a bootstrap class. And right here on the method, now, as soon as we input something on the input, so we're gonna set the text variable to the value of the input, and for this reason we're using this argument. We can see here that this argument contains different properties, and if we use this value property here, this gives us the information of the value that's inputted in our input tag. We see an error here. This happens because this expression is basically an object. We can just simply cast it to strings since we're assigning it to a string variable. We'll also see this other underline here, which basically is the compiler is telling us that this expression could be null, and if we just put the exclamation mark on the end, we're telling the compiler that the value of the expression won't be null. Let me run the application so we see the result. Okay, here we have our form. As soon as we input something on the input, it is automatically, the method is being called, and on the text variable, everything that we input in our form is displayed just down below. So let me just now see like a mouse event. For this reason, I'm just gonna make the code so that as soon as we hover over some specific div, we would want some text to appear or something. For this reason, I'm just taking a div element here. I'm making it a bit visible, so I'm giving it a border. So I'm making the border to be 1 pixel, solid and black. And here I'm just going to need to input, I'm going to need another variable. I'm naming it like div text. So as soon as we hover over some specific division, we want text to be displayed. Just using a paragraph tag again, and here I'm just inputting the value of the div text, and we need to specify the event attribute here. We have different mouse events that can be triggered that we can actually handle. I'm just using the onmouseover, and we'll handle this event with a handle mouse, or like a mouse over method. Then click over here and generate an event handler. As you can see, in this different event, we have a different argument than the argument of the other event. This is just because that this event take different kind of information about that specific event, which once again we can use if we want to, or if we do not want to, we don't have to use this argument. In my case, I'm just gonna display to the div text like a text of you are hovering over the div, just some text. Let me run this. And as soon as we see this div with a border, and as soon as I hover over with the mouse, we see this text being displayed inside the div because the method was triggered, and we updated the value of this div text variable that was inside the div, inside the paragraph text here. Now let's just see another event. Let me just take the example of the keyboard events. So we have different kind of keyboard events. I'm just gonna use the onkeydown event now. I'm just gonna show you how it works. So it's triggered as soon as we input something, as we press something in our keyboard. And for this demonstration, I'm just going to use this first div that we wrote above. So I'm just going to change the event handler here. So I'm taking an onkeydown attribute and I handle it with the method handle keydown. As you can see, again, we have another argument, the keyboard event argument, that contains information about this event. For this case, I'm just gonna set to the text variable the value of the key that we have pressed. So to do this, I'm just taking the event. We have the different properties here, and I just need to use this key property to get the value of that key. You can see how this will work if I run the application. So now we are handling this event in this first input, and if I press something on my keyboard, we see this displayed. Then, so basically the last key that we have inputted, that we have pressed, we see displayed below. This doesn't only take numbers and characters, but also the other keys in our keyboard. Okay, so a couple last events that we'll see now are the focus events. So we have an onfocus and one onblur event, which basically just are triggered. The first one when we click on a form, and the second one when we click out of a form. Okay, so I'm still going to use this first form for this demonstration as well. So I'm just removing this event handler, and I'm using firstly on the onfocus event. Handle focus will be the name of the method, and on the same input I'm just also handling the onblur event with the method. I'm giving it a name of handle blur. So now let us just generate an event handler for each one of those. So we see yet again another argument that contains information about this event, but we're not going to use it in our case. So I'm just basically going to display to the text something like you are typing whenever we click on the form, or basically the form is focused. That's okay, I would suggest. And for the handle blur method, let us so for the onblur event, let us generate an event handler and just some different text there. You are not typing, you have clicked away. Let's see how this works. So as soon as I click on the form, we see this text. As soon as I click outside the form, then this other, so basically the onblur event was triggered. So when we click the form, the onfocus event is triggered and we see this message displayed. And then we need to click, actually not just hover outside the form, the input, but click outside the input to be able to trigger the onblur event. And there are different kinds of events that we can handle, but these were some of the types just to give you an understanding on how handling web UI events works. I hope you found the video helpful and learned a few things. In case you have questions or something remains unclear, please do not hesitate, comment down below, and thank you for watching. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel or like the video, and I will see you hopefully next time.